Morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you for joining us. This is the session named Integrated Practice of Anti-Violence Against Women from Services to Policy Advocacy. And we are so happy to have this session because this session will be held by Modern Women Foundation, which is a very prestigious foundation in our society, Taiwan. And in the beginning, we want to have the whole audience picture together, then we'll continue our sessions. So can we have an honor to invite you take off your mask, then we join all the speakers to have a photo first.
And they say the brachial bias, okay? Brachial bias.
Thank you for joining us for this session photo gathering. Thank you. And now we are going to start our session. I'm the moderator of this session. My name is Lillian, working at University of Taiwan, Department of Social Work. Now I'm the board member of Modern Women's Foundation. And thank you for joining us. Actually, my research area is related to the gender care, violence against women, gender and work, and migrant workers. And I used to have some experience in other countries, like also from university in UK, UCLA, USA. And then I was the visiting scholar recently in Chiba University and Tokyo University. And it's my great honor to be here. And today, our session's concept, can be divided to three. First one is integrated practice of domestic violence, sexual assault through service and advocacy from the local point of Taiwan. Then secondly, we are going to address a pandemic impact threat of COVID-19 and how social worker and all the programs can be done in Taiwan through the Working Women Foundation. Then we are going to address the third part, new role of NGO for women's centered approach by passing very important acts such as stalking and harassment. And we are lucky to have 5 speakers in our session. But before that, we're going to have our president of the Modern Women's Foundation, President Pan, to give us a remark and talking about the history and the foundation's contribution to our society. And President Pan is very, very prestigious advocate in our society for women, particularly in the area of safety. And she is the founder of Modern Women's Foundation 35 years ago when she was the city council of Taipei. And she has served in the Congress for more than maybe 60 years old, and highly emphasized women's safety in Taiwan, in the world. So she passed the 3 very, very basic anti-violence act in Taiwan. I think she is going to share with us later. And something which I'm so impressed with her is she was Taiwan's gender equality advocate for several years. That's why last year, Taiwan has been number 6 in terms of GI ranking from the UN indicators, showing that Taiwan is very prestigious in very, very important in the gender equality. And we are happy because a privileged person like President Pan have been involved a lot. That's why we got such a great ranking right now. And recently, President Pan was the SIA, Soros International American president. And now she is always also moved to the board member of SI. and which is so prestigious of the world. So we are happy to have her in in Taiwan and in this foundation. And now she's going to give us remarks. Pam, please.
Thank you, Dr. Wang. Hello, everyone. I'm Tina Wei-Gang Pan, the chairman of the Modern Woman Foundation. Modern Woman Foundation has been assistance in advocating human rights of women and children, promoting the passage of the 3 laws, preventing the control of sexual assault, domestic violence, and sexual harassment. In today's forum, we will have our social worker sharing projects that how we help victims of all kinds of gender-based violence, especially the change in the way of victims service under the academic and some new ideas we hope instill in Taiwan society. You are all invited to join us ending gender-based violence and achieve gender justice. Break the bias. Break the bias.
Okay, thank you, President Pan's introduction about her will and the effort from the Modern Women's Foundation. And she highly emphasized the need working together as the defense power for women, particularly in the safety issue. And we will have a first speaker, and the first speaker will be a senior social worker in our society, and she's highly making her life for the domestic violence issues. And today she's going to share with us about economic empowerment of victims of domestic violence, women particularly. And this is a new model, but not very new, maybe more than 10 years. But in Taiwan, Modern Women Foundation has been working very hard in this new model for the women, particularly from disadvantaged, economic disadvantaged people. And Yue is a person working in this project more than 9 years. And she got master and BA degree from National Taiwan University, majoring in social work, especially in the domestic violence and sexual assault. So we are lucky to have her sharing about her experience, how she create the model, how to build up the person's safety suffered from domestic violence. Yue, now the floor is yours. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Yvonne. I have here to share models of economic empowerment for domestic violence with you today. I will give you a brief introduction of economic abuse first, followed by how Modern Women's Foundation has used these models to help abused women, and ended by a children's story, so you can have a clear idea about what we have achieved over these years. I have been working in Modern Women's Foundation for over 10 years. Speaking of domestic violence, one might think of physical violence, mental violence, threat, and stalking. However, economic abuse is also one common type of intimate partner violence that is often ignored. Economic abuse means that the respondent prevents the other party from obtaining money or other financial resources to have control over the relationships. It can be roughly divided into 4 types: economic exploitation, economic control, employment sabotage, and financial arbitrariness. And what exactly do they mean? When the respondent prevents the victim from retaining resource and property, for example, refusing to pay bills for necessary household expense, taking away the victim's money or property, borrowing money with the victim's name so the victim becomes indebted, it is economic exploitation. The second type is economic control. The respondent limits or supervises the victim's use of money. The victim must follow the respondent's rules, and the respondent may require the victim to explain how the money is spent or to provide the recipes, or the victim will not be reimbursed. Employment sabotage is the situation when the respondent prevents the victim from working, such as forcing the victim to quit a job or refuse a promotion, forbidding victim to work overtime, harassing the victim by making phone calls or going to the victim's workplace, or always making troubles so the victim needs to show up and fix them, and the victim will then be late or absent from work. Last, financial arbitrariness. In that case, the victim has no idea about financial status of the family. The respondent monopolized economic resources and make major financial decisions alone, such as buying a car or a house or refusing to cover household expenses. Economic abuse takes many forms, and some ideas in Eastern culture have made it harder for victims to push back and pave the way for respondents to control or exploit the victim in the name of love. For example, couples shall support each other through thick and thin, and money talk is a huge taboo. These means are also subtle that victims can hardly make clear to the outsiders, or the victims are even unaware they are abused, not to mention to ask for help. Modern Women's Foundation has had strong focus on economic abuse since 2014, and we have offered helping hands to hundreds of economically abused women. We have noticed that, as shown on this slide, economic abuse may not seem fatal or serious, but it surely weakens women's power, subjectivity, and autonomy in relationships. In some economic abuse cases, financial insecurity forces them to depend on their partners. Living isn't an option since they are unable to cope with poverty or homelessness. Some women even suffer from high debt. Therefore, in the same year, we invited Dr. Judy Postmus, a program participant of the All-State Foundation's Economic Empowerment Program in the United States, to share American experience as a base for us to develop a localized group program that is closer to the needs of women who have been abused in Taiwan. Here are program goals for your reference. Key to empower women are help them access to resources, teach them knowledge to manage resources, develop their skills to manage resources, and make them believe in I can do it. In addition to developing economic abuse questionnaire to help victims see how they are economically abused, we also shared financial knowledge and ways of resource inventory check, plus how short-term financial goal is set and can be achieved to increase their motivation for change. With all the actions, these females got to know their own financial status and that they can for sure break through the affliction they have long been in. This is a template of ecological map for resource inventory. So those abused women know how they prepare themselves for their short-term goal. And this is a map drawn by a group member in Chinese. Along this way, we came to realize some of the females went beyond their capability because they were too soft-hearted to turn down their husband, or they wanted to compensate their children who witnessed how they had been abused. Paying more than they can afford leave this female no saving. Extra courses were given to build up the idea of boundaries, so they are not feeling guilty anymore when saying no, once they have done their part. And how would you draw the line? No longer is a myth to them. Some women finally move away from the ex-husband after being blood-sucked for more than 10 years. Some women had a hard time turning down their children and pay for everything their children wanted to start feeling guilty. But they started to express their care and love for the children in different ways. And now I want to share a story with you. Xiaohui is a client I had assisted with for 4 years. When she walks in, it was unlikely to guess she's a mother of 3 children, based on first impression, as she looks young and petite. She was sorrowful and frowned a lot when she shared her story with me. Xiaohui's family lived in a house owned by her mother-in-law, so rent didn't cost a dime. She and her husband were both employees, and their income totaled $1,700 monthly. Xiaohui's husband let her keep all his salary, but she was the one responsible for making ends meet. Although that's not quite abundant for a family of 5, from time to time, her husband made unplanned buys, such as 60-inch TV or video game gambling. And Xiaohui got insulted or even beaten whenever she has against her husband's request for money to ensure household expense is properly covered. She even started wondering whether she is badly incompetent, as her husband claimed all the time. There is no way they do not have enough money to cover everything. The repeated violence has urged her to run away many times. However, financial burden of raising children alone has stopped her. It feels as if her staying in this marriage and put up with her husband's violence in exchange for stable lives of her children is worthwhile. So she always told herself to be patient. At least she can have a place to live with her children. I have kept encouraging her, and it took Xiaohui 2 years to finally join the economic empowerment group. She was active and committed in getting to know how she could be prepared for the independence, as well as how she could sort out her own financial status. She took a lot of notes in the class, and she also built the habit of bookkeeping. When lecturer led the whole group to review the spending, with 3 weeks record, Xiaohui was able to tell her husband actually spent more than he earned. This was a turning point for Xiaohui to start thinking maybe her husband was a liability instead of an asset, and she actually makes enough money to raise the children alone. With encouragement, company, and money-saving tips from the groups, Xiaohui put her dream of raising her 3 children on her own into actions. For instance, she purchased food from supermarkets she worked in at really good price, and she prepared all the meals for the family herself, as eating out cost more. Once she tried her smart tips and minimized living expenses in a proper way, and rejected her husband's request for money to cover his impulsive buys, for the first time after so many years, she started to save money. Xiaohui got divorced 6 months after the economic empowerment group ended, and she has been living her new happy and fulfilling life with her 3 children since then. She has shared her story with different abused women who got help from Modern Women's Foundation for a few times, hoping to share her courage with females who need and deserve fear-free lives. In the past decades, Modern Women's Foundation has carried out diversified programs for economic empowerment. In addition to continuous workshops and support groups, we also cooperate with employment consulting units. So those suffered from violence can gain stable income and accumulate assets through work. We have also been actively urging the revision of domestic violence laws so victims of economic abuse can be well protected. And in the future, we will continue to effort to help more victims of economic abuse so they can stay away from violence, live a dream of economic self-reliance, and have a more dignified life. And these are some pictures I want to share with you. This one, first one is the group member learning the ideas of boundaries through role play activities. And the second one, they are playing a game and sharing the change after joining the group. And the third one is the member who learned to budget her own lives. And the last one is members are discussing and planning their monthly saving target for the long-term goals. Okay, and thank you for your listening. We are looking forward to more people joining the force. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I think you have a very, very important point about what is economic empowerment for the domestic violence women. And they are the victims of the domestic violence, but the social worker or Modern Woman Foundation share our story about how to help them to be very capable of working in this area. And it is so impressive to me that social worker can do differently through this kind of project we called Empowerment Economic Model and initiated by the Modern Woman Foundation. Thank you so much. It is a good practice for us and for this society too. And your work is so impressive to the audience, I'm sure. And the next speaker is Pei-Ling Wang. And she's the member of Emergency and Intensive Care Committee of Taiwan Nurse Association. And she also is the Vice Director of Nursing Service, Taipei Medical University Hospital. Today, she's going to share with us about the effects of the pandemic of domestic violence and sexual assault victims' medical treatment, inspection, and the case service. And this is a medical model about the impact of pandemic on domestic violence. But we will also have a social work model done by Cha later. So this is something we are so happy to have her here. And since Pei-Ling has working very hard in this area, so we are lucky to have her experience about pandemic threatening to the medical area, but they did a good job for us. That's why Taiwan has been famous in this kind of a pandemic situation, but still we can be very proud of ourselves in terms of prevention and the treatment model in the world. Thank you. And the floor is yours, Pei-Ling.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Pei-Ling Wang. It is my honor to give me the opportunity to share the experience in Taiwan. This is my CV, as the host just introduced. I've divided my presentation into 4 parts. Here is the outline. Global coronavirus epidemic situations, domestic violence and sexual assault trend during the COVID-19 epidemic in Taiwan, the procedure of examination and medical treatment by domestic violence and sexual assault cases. Last, 5 principles for caring for the domestic violence and the sexual assault patient. I'll start off with a clear overview of global coronavirus epidemic. The data in this chart were statistics of 24th February 2022 from the website What Matters, which is a reference website that provides counters and real-time statistics for device topics. Under the Taiwan's government's policies and the public compliance with various epidemic prevention measures, such as hand hygiene, wearing masks, and maintain social distance, working from home, and other measures during the period of high alert. This is fortunate. The epidemic situation in Taiwan has remained a manageable situation. As you can see, those two charts from the screen, which is obtained from the Ministry of Health and Welfare website in Taiwan. The graph on the left is to compare the differences in domestic violence before and after the epidemic in the first half of 2020 and 2021. The data showed that domestic violence cases nearly rose to 4%. The chart on the right is an analysis of the relationship between domestic violence cases and the preparation in the first half of 2021. The data showed that the number of cases, more than 70%, related to marital relationship and other family member. Let's look at the difference in the sexual assault statistics. Surprisingly, compared to the first half of 2020, the number of sexual assault cases dropped from 2.3 thousand down to 7.9 thousand in 2021, a total decrease of 16%. Let's look at the chart on the right. The data which showed that the number of cases is mostly related to relative and friends, non-cohabiting partners, and the cyber acquaintance, which is statistics in the first half of 2021. This may surprise you. The relationship category, unknown, in the first half are only 2 cases in 2021, compared to 42 cases in 2020, a total dip by 95%. We think this may correlate the response with policies implemented at the same time, such as maintaining social distancing. Next, I'm going to share the procedure of medical treatment and case service by domestic violence and sexual assault cases in Taiwan. When a domestic violence or sexual assault cases arrives in the ER of General Hospital, the nurse will conduct the triage, and the case will be taken to a protected area, gynecology department, after explaining and obtain the consent to the case of the nurse and the social worker. And after the doctor finished the examination and the medical treatment with nurses as assistant, the police will bring the patient and evidence collection in the police station for the statement. There is another model at the government-designed hospital for sexual assault cases. We call that one-stop service. You can see the picture on the right. They provide a discrete and integrated space where the cases can also be examined and treated by doctors, also interrogated by police and the prosecutors, which reduce repeated questions and avoid secondary injuries, but temporarily changed to general service model during the severe epidemic period in May to June 2021. Another change is establishment for various control measures in hospitals during the epidemic since 20th January 2021. For example, Taipei Medical University Hospital, where I work for, we identified and checked temperature of everyone who attend entering the hospital by using technology equipment. We call it CIS, Contactless Intelligent Safe Pass. When the system detects that the person who has a history of travel or exposure to a country with a high risk of COVID-19 transmission, or when the body temperature data is higher than 37.5 Celsius, the guard at the hospital will not allow him entering the hospital and lead him to area A or B, which located outside the hospital for treatment directly. The domestic violence and sexual assault cases are the same control process which I was talking. From the previous report, we can see that after the various restraints during the epidemic, there are increased inconvenience for cases going to the hospital. As we know, the victim of domestic violence and sexual assault are very fragile, sensitive, and helpless. As a medical staff, it is important to do something to make he or she easier during the medical service. So here comes to the five important principles of care. First is protection. Two is privacy. Third is patience. When a patient arrives at the hospital, the nurse will arrange for the patient to enter a private space as soon as possible. We provide a safe environment and pay attention to their needs at any time to make the patient feel comfortable. Most important of all, the cooperation between multi-professionals such as physicians, social workers, policemen, to ensure the entire process goes smoothly. Finally, it is also very important, which is the follow-up treatment and care of the patient. The trauma to the patient is physical and psychological. Emergency physicians will make appointments for various specialists according to the patient's condition. As shown in the picture on the right, through the assistance of physiologists, psychological treatment, and social worker continued life and social support to help the case return to normal life. Finally, I will introduce my partner, Cha Lin, to share the importance test for the social work. In the meantime, I would like to wish everyone in the world safe and healthy. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We have heard very impressive talk about pandemic time, how we survive, particularly for those who are the victims of domestic violence and sexual assault. And Pedin give us a very clear picture about how 5Ps can be done through the treatment model of medical situation. And also we will have a social work model from Chao right now. And before we start our Chao's talk, let me introduce Chao a little bit. Chao will share the same topic as Pedin talked about. That is the effect of pandemic of domestic violence and sexual assault victims services. But Chao will give us a picture of how they do in the practice of Modern Woman Foundation from social work perspective. Chao is very young, only 2 years working experience as a social worker. And she's also working at Modern Women's Foundation last 2 years. And last year, she was the one of speaker in our NGOCS Love session. She is very outstanding in this area. And we are happy to have her share with us from social work perspective and to see how social work can do something differently and helping the people who are under the threat of pandemic time. Chao, the floor is yours, please.
Thank you, Dr. Wong, and good morning, everyone. I am Cha Lin. I'm a social worker from the Modern Women's Foundation. Today, I want to share our experience in the case service for sexual assault victims during the pandemic. I've divided the topic into 4 parts, including challenges, experience, concerns, and our suggestion. And first, I would like to share the challenges arising from the pandemic. One of them is the cancellation of one-stop services for victims of sexual assault. To avoid reality statements by victims of sexual assault, which force victims to recall and disclose their victimization experience repeatedly, Taiwan has implemented the one-stop services since 2011, integrating the process of injury assessment and recording statement in medical institutions. The one-stop services save time for the victims and reduce their distress by providing safety, trust, privacy, and thorough hospital assistance when examining the injury and recording statement. However, the epidemic put a strain on the hospital and the medical personnel, while making hospitals become high-risk contagion hotspots and forcing the one-stop services to be suspended until now. In addition, the indoor space for recording statements for the police stations needs to be changed to the outdoor area, which draws concern to both privacy and services quality. The second challenge is increasing the risk of domestic violence. According to the Ministry of Health and Welfare Statistics, after the Level 3 alert on May 15, 2021, since the lockdown has changed the pattern of daily life, anxiety and life pressure have increased sharply, which has caused tension between family members. The number of domestic violence reports in Taiwan increased by about 15% which is over the same period that year. Under the same roof with intimate partners throughout the day, only exposes these abused women to a high-risk violence environment, where they are more likely to be monitored and less easily connected with the outside world. Third, I want to talk about shelter and settlement. Both victims of domestic violence or sexual assault cases have shelter needs. Although shelters are functionally operating, the available beds in shelters are limited. In order to arrange appropriate distance as COVID-19 precaution. Not to mention shelters that already ran out of beds before the level 3 alert. For example, shelter in Taiwan Hsinchu district. In addition, in some sites, asylum seekers have to self-pay for the required PCR test and submit a certificate of negative test result before they move in, which may shut out people with financial difficulties. The 14 days quarantine in shelter might also force women at work to choose between income and safety. Next, I want to share our CAS services experience. Responding to the COVID-19 pandemic is an ongoing challenge for courts that requires flexibility and openness to new process for both court staff and court users. Court professionals and justice systems partners are working every day to meet this challenge. Due to the COVID-19 epidemic, the court in Taiwan has widely adopted remote court hearings. Judges remain in court while the parties appear in a separate courtroom or police station and conduct the hearings through video conferencing. However, according to the actual work experience of social workers, holding a court session in a non-formal space can draw significant privacy concerns, since the area might not have an appropriate independent space for the online court hearings. So social worker will contact the clerk in the court to make sure the judicial procedure is going on. Besides, we will explain it to our clients so that they will feel more comfortable and protected during the court hearing. During the epidemic, traditional telephone services and hotline could not function as efficiently as before. By developing diverse resources and being actively involved in the prevention of domestic violence, we can construct a full-fledged support channel to ensure the safety of women at all times. We suggest that distant help-seeking channels should be increased, such as online consultation through emails, text messages, social media, and continuously providing people with support services. Moreover, while women are still more often liable for purchasing food and daily groceries in Taiwan, emergency assistance and consultation stations can be set up nearby pharmacies and stores to allow victims to seek help without alerting the perpetrator. This is the end of my presentation, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Chao Chao. I think you already know how social work can be very differently play their role at the pandemic times. And you can see the challenging through the case report or this session report is full of kind of humanitarian concern. First one is the cancellation of one-stop services in Taiwan at the pandemic time. And the challenging is also include the risk of domestic violence is increasing for the people at home. And also you see the limited of the shelter in Taiwan when the pandemic time, it just happened to the other world as well. So we are happy to hear she also developed, talking about the new development of the pandemic time, the period of pandemic time for the social work. And this is so impressive to me because we never thought how to prepare. And she also highlight how is the future we can do further and can do better at a high-risk situation for the certain people like domestic violence victims. And we are going to have another very interesting area talking about sexual assault issues. And happily, we have Miao Ru is going to share with us about how is the Philip concept, affirmative consent, only yes means yes. I think you have heard only yes means yes for a long time, but how is it make it practically in the social work field or other field? And we will hear Miao Ru will share with us. Miao Ru is a social worker supervisor at the in the Modern Woman Foundation, and she has been working for a long time in this area, very experienced in social work as well. Now she is supervisor in this area. And Modern Women's Foundation's work experience particularly give her a kind of growth, and luckily Modern Women's Foundation have her to have more than 10 years experience working for the victims of sexual assault and this kind of something regarded issues as well. And let's welcome Miao Ru. I think you already waited for a long time to think about how this OYMY, and let's welcome Miao Ru, and the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Wang, and hello everyone. My name is Zhang Miao Ru. I work at Modern Women's Foundation as the social work supervisor in the Sexual Violence Intervention Unit. Since 1987, Modern Women's Foundation has been dedicated ourselves to the prevention to sexual assault, domestic violence, and sexual harassment. Under the leading of our chairperson, apart from providing direct advice to women suffering from gender-based violence, we promoted the passage of 3 special laws that aims to eliminate gender-based violence, and victims are no longer left ignored. These 3 laws, Sexual Assault Crime Prevent Act, Domestic Violence Prevent Act, and Sexual Harassment Prevention Act, respectively passed through in 1996, 1998, and 2006, urging the government to respect and with each reported case. Today, we want to share the different passage of how we advocate for prevention of sexual assault in Taiwan. Also, we will talk about why we introduced the concept of affirmative sexual consent to the Taiwanese public and how we apply to slogan, only yes means yes, to achieve our goals. Like we mentioned before, Sexual Assault Crime Prevention Act was passed through in 1996. However, the amendment of the definition of the crime itself happened 3 years later, that is in 1999. The Criminal Code finally had a chapter related to sexual assault crimes. Before 1999, if a woman was sexually assaulted in Taiwan, it was considered an offense against morality, not an offense against one's sexual autonomy. For example, people would use jianying to refer to this kind of event. These 2 words actually describe a situation the man and woman have unaccepted sexual behaviors. Jane was not about an attack. On the other hand, it's about an affair. In short words, it's against the morality when women had sexually assaulted in Taiwan before 1999. Other than that, if the accused was to be sued, the woman was expected to desperately struggle for herself. In practice, under the influence of the concept of chastity, a woman struggling to death was viewed as the legal element to bribe the attacker to jail in some extreme cases. And of course, the concept of the sexual offense is actually an act against one's will was not widely acknowledged before 1999. You might be wondering why I use women as the subject of victims of sexual violence. Before 1999, our country held the perspective that only women suffered from sexual violence. Men would not be the victims of sexual offense. Therefore, as the man in Taiwan before 1999, if you were sexually assaulted, you couldn't even report it to the police since there was no law regulating this kind of assault. After the amendment of the criminal code, the judicial system and the public in Taiwan are changing their perspective on sexual assault. First, we strengthen the right to control one's own body and the right to sexual autonomy. Second, regardless of your gender, Sexual Assault Crime Prevention Act applies to everyone who is sexually assaulted. Third, the Williams is the core value if the sexual behavior is against one's will. It's considered a sexual offense. It's no longer no means yes. It's no means no. Last but not least, the two words genuine is replaced by sexual intercourse to destigmatize the influence of morality. It seems there are going to be improvements after the law amendment. However, from 1999 to 2017, since the legal element is against one's will, one has to express not to show her, his, or their williams. What will this lead to? In practice, our clients are often asked to answer questions like, do you say no? How did you say no? Did you yell for help? Or did you tell other people what happened to you in the call? All these questions imply that if one did something beforehand, there would probably be no sexual offense at all. The offender is the one to be responsible for the sexual violence. However, these victim blaming questions shift the focus from the offender to the victim. When there is an emergency, people might freeze or dissociate. Because of that, people experience sexual assault sometimes can't express their opinions. Nevertheless, these normal reactions aren't taken into consideration in the call. Apart from that, in reality, even though our clients say no, this no is ignored by the offender. Or even worse, the no is twisted as an yes under the influence of culture. In Taiwan, sexual assault remains a gender-based violence, since the majority of the people experiencing sexual offense are women. From our client's experience, it seems like women's rights, sexual autonomy still is unrecognized after amendment of the criminal code. Therefore, we started thinking, in order to build a friendly environment that truly respects one's rights of sexual autonomy, we need to delete the concept of sexual violence prevention. In the court, the prosecutor or the judge want to know whether our client said no. However, our clients often express late, I didn't consent in the real world. To transform the culture of victim blaming, we take a leaf out of the concept of affirmative sexual consent from the US and Canada, and develop the slogan of only yes means yes. The point is that one should be sure the sexual behavior is consented by the other person. Also, we translate if there is no consent, it's sexual offense. Whether the legal elements would change from against one's will to the accused is given consent to have sex is still under debate in Taiwan. Despite that, through our advocacy and campaign, there is already a change in the judicial system. In 2021, the Supreme Court applied the concept of only yes means yes in the ruling. We believe that through the continued education and advocacy, everyone will get to know the concept of affirmative sexual consent, and ultimately this will transform the culture of victim blaming. Now, since there is still some time, I want to share some only yes means yes campaign with you. We roll out our campaign in April every year in 2017. Why April? Apart from acting in concern with Danny Day, which takes place on Wednesday in the last week of April, Lin Yihan, a Taiwanese writer, committed suicide at the end of April in 2017. She detailed the content why sexual violence happened in the novel, which raised the public awareness of sexual assault. Her death aroused the pain and anger in the public. Therefore, MWF firstly called for people to take part in Danny Day and use the slogan, apply the slogan of only yes means yes to explain the concept of if there is no consent, it's sexual offense. We hold the belief that consent and respect is the core conduct in any kind of sexual behavior. According to our survey, 65% of the respondents think that women should take the risk of being sexually assaulted if she acts openly, wears sexy clothes, or usually hangs out in pubs. 61% of the respondents hold the perspective that victims should be responsible for experiencing sexual violence. This survey shows that the victim blaming culture is deeply rooted in our society. In 2018, we cooperated with the Fashion Design Department of Shijian University. A runway show was held. Models inclusive of a famous lawyer, and some people experienced sexual assault. Write the "Only Yes Means Yes" t-shirt designed by the Fashion Design Department. We want to convey that regardless of one's dressing, only you get one's consent. Can you have sexual behavior with the person? In 2019, by visualizing the critiques victims receive from their surrounding people or the public in red words, people realize the hurt can also be done by the words. We wish to build a friendly environment in which one won't be blamed when she or he or they decides to reveal the assault. Instead, she or he or they receive support. In 2020, considering most of offenders are men in sexual assault, we cooperate with An Xinya, who is a celebrity, have high popularity among male groups in Taiwan to promote the concept of only yes means yes. In 2021, we work with designer Zhao Wei, Architecture Department of Shijian University, photographer Shu Yiliang, and two celebrities An Xinya and Wu Kexi to design installation art by conveying the unspeakable predicament faced by the people experiencing sexual violence. In these two pieces of installation art, we hope to review the perspective on this social issue and broaden the possibility of communicating with the public. Okay, thank you for your listening.
Thank you, Miao. I think that's excellent campaign strategy for the society, particularly for women who are suffered from the sexual violence. And Modern Woman Foundation is kind of an agency who do the direct service to the victims, but also the indirect service such as advocacy. And we heard Miao Ru talking about how the history, how is the history of only means yes, particularly for the kind of concept rebuilding in our society. I highly impressed with her talk about how is the people thinking about sexual assault, and from the early years, and women are the victims and blamed by the society, blamed by the parents, blamed by the parents or family as well. But now we want to have the whole society respect. This might not be the woman's fault, but the society need to face. This is the concept issue called sexual autonomy. It's so crucial in the sexual relationship. And only yes means yes. It's very successful, and it has been last for several years. So we can see modern woman makes the society so different today to thinking about what is sex, and we have to respect both sides, men and women as well. And all the campaign is so influencing in past few years. Not only very because people know the slogan, but I think the slogan make difference for every man, body's mind, particularly young generation. And thank you. This is great. Thank you, Miao. And now we are going to have a next speaker. And this speaker we're talking about how is the newest anti-gender violence law in Taiwan. And we are happy to have Wang Qiupi, Wang Qiulan. Qiulan is a researcher in the Modern Women's Foundation and working this area regarding the women's safety issues for more than 21 years. And I had come to know her since my student has been taking the Modern Women Foundation as a field workplace, and she was the supervisor before for the student. And she's the licensed social worker and also working very hard for the Legal Aid Foundation to do some advocacy work. So we are highly happy to hear her research regarding legislative process on anti-gender-based violence in Taiwan, regarding the Stalking and Harassment Preventing Act, which is quite new to us and to our society. And Qiulan, now is the time for you, and the floor is yours, please.
Thank you for being here. I'm glad to share the legislation of Stalking and Harassment Prevention Act in Taiwan. I will divide my presentation in 3 parts: the legislative action process and main point of the law. In Taiwan, the legislative action for stalking law was introduced by grassroots NGOs. Since 2011, the Modern Women Foundation has been actively campaigning for stalking law, helping many victims of stalking, domestic violence, and sexual harassment along the way. Through our online and field research, we have discovered that 1 in 8 women aged 16 to 24 has been stalking. And 1 in every 5 young adults have been cyber stalking, most occurring through social media. And because of this, we need stalking law to effectively address the stalking and harassment problem in Taiwan and more directly meet the needs of victims and protect the safety and well-being of all Taiwanese citizens. Next, we talk about our legislative actions to increase the public awareness in regards to stalking and our legislative actions. NWF utilized a wide range of methods, including online surveys, international seminars, press conferences, reality games, and campaigns for school and professionals. In terms of our legislative lobbying efforts, we have collaborated with various NGOs, experts, and scholars to form legislative coalition, which have drafted stalking and Harassment Prevention Act, thorough press conferences, public hearings, joint statements, conversation with related departments, and official public hearings. We have strove towards gaining the support of legislators of all political parties, eventually leading to the passing of Stalking and Harassment Prevention Act. And the legislative process of the Stalking and Harassment Prevention Act in Taiwan can be divided in 3 stages. First stage in 2014, MWF formed a legislative team to draft a bill of Stalking and Harassment Prevention Act. After the bill was drafted in 2015, it was signed by legislators and given to the legislative yuan for approval. However, it failed to pass. Second stage, during the 2017 Legislative Committee's public hearing, the draft was again signed by legislators, which are legislators from different parties, submitted their drafts of the Stalking and Harassment Prevention Act. In 2018, we had anticipated the law was passed before Mother's Day 2019, but it was delayed because of its overlap with other laws, increasing cases, and priority in public security. As cited by the Ministry Interior Affairs, the draft was returned for further review by the head of legislative yuan, but no progress was made. Third stage, in 2020, the civil society launched the consensus draft. After speaking out many times through the press conference and public hearings, we decided the definition and scope of the Stalking and Harassment Prevention Act was far too limited to truly be effective. However, even after our visit to the executive yuan to amend the government draft, its passing was still stalled. However, in April 2021, a saleswoman who worked at a phone store was murdered in a stalking case, which surprised the entire country, forcing the legislative yuan to quickly deliberate the bill. Finally, in November 2021, the legislative yuan passed the Stalking and Harassment Prevention Act after third reading, which will take effect on July 1st, 2022. Sorry. And next, the main points of our Stalking and Harassment Prevention Act. First, we have defined the legal definition of stalking and 8 types of stalking behavior. I will show the the slide for everyone. Sorry. 8 types of stalking and harassment behavior. Oh, it's many words, so maybe you can, everyone can see. Okay. Oh, and such as surveillance and stalking specific victims repeatedly and continuously make him or her feel will be a crime. Okay, and written warning: individuals suspected of stalking or harassment by the police will be given a written warning, after which officials are permitted to take further protective measures as necessary. And we have a protection order. Within 2 years after the written warning was given, if the perpetrator continues to stalk or harass the victim, police, or prosecutor can then apply for a protection order. The criminalization of stalking is very important in this law. Offender found guilty of stalking, carrying a lethal weapon or other dangerous object, or violating protection order may face up to 5 years imprisonment or a fine. And preventive detention. In the case of aggravated stalking or violating of protection order on multiple occasions, the suspect can be detained by the police. The current act only pertains to incidents of sexual or gender related. Make it different to address incidents outside these parameters. As such, we continuously review and supervise the current Stalking and Harassment Prevention Act. We must preserve the integrity and effectiveness of this law and hope to become a society where no one has to suffer and fear of stalking. Thank you.
Thank you, Chuan. I think everybody knows what is the new for Taiwan's anti-violence law has been on the way to develop a new type. And this new law we call stalking and harassment prevention and treatment in the future, starting last year. So this is a new cornerstone of the violence against women issue. So let's thank you so much for sharing with us. But I also learned from her speech she talked about how Modern Woman Foundation make very difference through advocacy, and this advocacy can be shared through the policy making. Then we can see how this kind of advocacy can impact the law change or law modification in our society. Highly impressed with the kind of evidence-based approach, learning that from the taking the data from research, then do the social media to shape the social force, and lastly use the kind of legislative mechanism to change the law of the society and protecting the woman in our society particularly. And now we are going to open the Q&A. So maybe all the speakers would you come to the front? Thank you. Then we take questions. And all the participants, please just use the Q&A and we can share your question and answer your question as well. So we have all speakers in front of the platform. So if you can, please just write in the chatting room, then we can anyone would like to say something before we have questions? Otherwise, I'll give the question to Miao. Yes. Miao's speech or talk is so impressive to us, and I want to get a little bit clear about how the advocacy work of the Only Yes Means Yes can be done. So could you share with us what you have achieved through advocating Only Yes Means Yes? And I'm sure it will make difference for whole Taiwan, but also for the whole world, how this kind of slogan can be put into the practice. And slogan is not only slogan, but it's kind of practical concern for anyone in the world where they got a slogan impact or slogan kind of clarify their mind, then we can get safety society or friendly society. And this is a question to Miao. Miao, would you share us your experience about advocating Only Yes and Means Yes? And we heard some, but we want to learn more. Miao, please.
I will answer this question in 3 parts. First, the public is paying attention to the culture of welcoming. For example, once dressing is not the main cause of sexual assault. Other than that, the public get to know the right of affirmative sexual consent. Second, we have a major progress in the judicial system. In 2021, the Supreme Court applied the concept of Only Yes Means Yes in the ruling. This helps settle a model for verdict. Even though we have these achievements, last but not least, there is still room for improvement. We will continue to advocate the Only Yes Means Yes. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's great. We need some from this your short talk too, and I'm sure the victims or the perpetrator need to know what is the sexual autonomy in our new generation. When I was in National Taiwan University taking the position of Gender Equality Committee, I find out some of the victims or perpetrator of gender issues are related to their early life of a kind of concept of sexual autonomy. And so most of them have very misunderstanding of the sexual relationship between different gender or the same between genders. So I think this campaign, as you have said, is very impressive to our society. We need it. We not only need it, but we also need it all over the world, all over the island, because from the young generation to the elderly generation, they might be the perpetrator and they might be the victims in our society. So we need it. All the campaign can be spread to any corner of the island. And then, as Miao said before, Canada and other countries has been so very put a lot of effort in this issue as well. So we wish will continue to do it. And thank you, Miao. You have done a good job for our society, not only for the Modern Women's Foundation, or not only for the this kind of academic area or particular practice area. So can I also have a question to the rest of people? Anyone would like to add something before we end this session? You want to say some words before we end? Just to say words, thank you words to the audience. It's okay. Yes, I can translate for you. Yes, they are very humble, you know. In fact, they can speak in English, but they're just humble and not so used to it. Yeah, I can translate for you, no problem.
谢谢大家今天就是来听我们现代妇女基金会有这几个很重要的主题。对，那如果未来有任何对这些主题有任何的想法或是建议的话，其实也欢迎可以跟我们联系。然后我们的官网都有进一步就是相关的一些资讯。那谢谢你们。Thank you. I think on representative of the Modern Women Foundation, I really like those words. You were sharing about how is the
expectation from her, or maybe from the Modern Women Foundation, that today's models of explanation about anti-violence against women's services or advocacy can be only a part of sharing, but very crucial part of work of Modern Women's Foundation. And if you have any question or any further ideas, suggestion to Modern Women's Foundation, as you said, she's the old speakers will share their experience and the working model to you. And Modern Women is very, very successful in this area. That you have heard that all the models of the servicing the victims of women has been very, very successful. And I'm lucky to learn a lot. And our student has been assigned to this agency for field work. Almost everyone said this is a great place to have field work of social work particularly. So thank you. You as a very kind of suggestion to our audience. If you have question or you have suggestion, no hesitate. Just do your contact. And this is the contact information on your screen. Modern Women's Foundation's contact phone number and website. And if you look at the website, you are impressed by this agency, this organization, not only for women, but for the LGBT as well, not only for women, but for men as well. And I'm sure you can also find the best model, best practice in Taiwan, developed by the Modern Women Foundation. And 35 years old experience can share a lot with you, but we only have 90 minutes today to share with you. And hopefully we can meet next year. I'm sure all the speakers here will share with you more next year. And thank you for your participation. Without your participation, there's no way we can successfully carry out this session. Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye.